Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. I'm Kristin, and I'm joined by the old ball and chain here, Ron Ward. Ron.
I've got to get back to writing my intros. You really stink. My goodness.
I thought it was good. Well, Ron, here we are, Thanksgiving Day, and something I'm thankful for, that is the rollback of woke DEI initiatives that we're seeing left and right across the country.
Oh, that's true. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, Kristin.
Thank you. One track mind here. We called it early on. We did episode 10. I'm talking May of 2023. We did the DEI burnout because I was seeing the writing on the wall. You did too after I presented you with a lot of articles that were coming out. And it wasn't until June that things really started rolling as far as people leading these giant conglomerates realizing that they made a mistake. But we'll get into that. Let's talk about Thanksgiving real quick here. Ron, what is your absolute favorite dish and what are you doing this Thanksgiving?
My favorite dish is something cooked by someone else. That's my motto.
Easy to please. I like it.
I'm traveling to Virginia, spending time with my parents, my sister, brother-in-law, niece. It's great.
I love it.
I'm going to get the ride in the back seat with my little grandson.
Oh, are you bringing the guitar?
7 hours of uninterrupted. I probably won't, but my sister has a piano, and we're a musical family, so we usually get a tune in.
I like it. I know. I think I remember last year you guys were singing, or I thought you had the guitar, but maybe it was the piano. Very cool.
I do think someone had a guitar there, but anyway, Kristin, you never. I don't know if you're being modest or you forgot about it, but you are basically a chef. So why don't, before we delve into your favorite topic, why don't you give our listeners, what's a cool dish someone could try for Thanksgiving?
I do enjoy cooking. So thank you for noticing. And I get a lot of engagement when I post some of my meals on Instagram, surprisingly. But my favorite is stuffing. And it's really important to make it to where it's crispy on the top, but moist still. Stuffing can go wrong really quickly. So I do a cornbread stuffing with sausage and apple.
Oh my God.
So it achieves all of that. You have to do it in the oven, at least at the end, to get that crisp top.
That sounds great. Kristin, we have our conference coming up December 5th in Summerville, South Carolina, and there's a nutritionist going to be there. You're familiar with her. She did a conservative podcast, but I'm hiring her as a nutritionist, and she's literally going to help me cook a few meals.
I like that. Fantastic.
I've got to do better.
Yeah, I need to as well. Mine's more the gym.
All right, let's jump in.
Okay, all right, we're doing it.
Kristin already mentioned that we did the episode on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We just asked reasonable questions, and at that time, you weren't even supposed to question, but things were started to change, and in June of 2023, the Supreme Court reversed some of the policies in effect, which gave certain ethnicities advantages in getting in these major universities. And Kristin, before you and I even did that episode, I watched a special where these people had worked since they sacrificed to get their kids an education. They sit up late doing homework and doing all these things. And then when it came time to try to get in an Ivy League school, they didn't have a chance.
Yeah.
Because people who had not worked as hard were given an advantage. And I knew in my heart that it just wasn't right. And so that put me on, I guess, more of a journey. And then you brought up, let's do an episode on it. And we got a lot of response on that. And I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, I am too. And I even reached out to friends of mine in the BIPOC community. And that's non-white, basically. So just in case anybody doesn't know what BIPOC is. And I made sure to, that it was basically tasteful and tastefully done, right? And I was given the green light. So I want to talk about Walmart. I mentioned that in the intro here. And I think it's funny. There's a play on words. You're seeing all the articles out there and they're saying Walmart is rolling back because they're always talking about rolling back prices. Like that's their thing, rolling back DEI. But it's sparking debates everywhere. I'm talking from boardrooms to bar stools. And, rightfully so. It seems after years of pouring billions into diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, companies are pulling back. But we want to talk about the why. And was it wasted money? Did it create more problems than it solved? So that's what we're going to be unpacking today. And let's not forget that these changes are happening during a cultural shift. I would say it really took off in 2020. And we hear the phrase a lot. You've probably heard it, Ron, get woke, go broke, or go woke, go broke, right? It's gained a lot of traction.
Well, I think a lot of what happened in the woke era is, where does it stop?
Yeah.
You went from, you've got 2 or 3 genders to 100 genders. And we began to see things that were so bizarre that I think regular working people who are working, they're trying to raise a family, they don't have time for all of this nonsense.
Right.
And at some point, you got to put on the brakes. The adults have to come back in the room. You have to set some rules. And that's what I saw begin to happen. And also, I just saw that anger and hatred. There's always something wrong. Any time something is driven by hatred and you're actually, even though it was never admitted, you're putting a particular race, particularly Caucasians, down, then there's something wrong with that. And I had some people tell me that they felt extremely guilty and demoralized during DEI training. Now, these were Caucasians who felt this way. And I don't think that's the way you should leave a training program feeling.
Right. Yeah, definitely should not be the intention. And I don't think it was. I think it's just, we talked about Japan a little bit last episode and how they put a 100-year plan in place when they're putting together business proposals. And I really don't feel like there was much foreshadowing done with the DEI programs being put out. It's just like, let's put out a fire. You'll notice, and I'll go over this a little bit in some of my notes here, but a lot of these programs, or the more aggressive DEI programs, were put in place right after George Floyd. So that's just responding versus being proactive. That's just being reactive. And, generally when you're reactive, it's not going to be well planned out.
No, that's true. So Walmart is not only rolling back, getting rid of the DEI programs, they're going to remove some LGBTQ plus merchandise.
You got it, Ron. You usually slaughter that one.
I thought I slaughtered it again. The products it deems inappropriate from its shelves, including certain books, chest binders intended for transgender youth. It will also cease providing company data to the Human Rights Campaign that tracks treatment of gay, lesbian, and trans employees, and will review continued funding and company participation in pride events. Now, the only question I have is, where were these people 2 years ago when all of a sudden they've had this, their moral compass has turned on and they begin to see that there's overkill? Also, when you talk about the Human Rights Campaign, to my knowledge, there was no oversight for that. So mistreatment can be subjective, is all I'm saying, Kristin. I could say, look how you've abused me on this podcast, but do you hear me? Do you hear me complaining? No, I'm saying that you're talking about subjective statistics, and we always, no matter which side, you have to look at those with caution when you're looking at those kind of stats.
Yeah, exactly. And when I think about these companies, it's always been about the bottom line. And for years, these companies have funneled billions into DEI programs without measurable returns. And, at first, when I'm looking back at it, it seemed like a way for them to address societal issues. But in many cases, it created, like you just talked about, divisions within organization. And really, it alienated customers and, of course, associates. But Walmart, like others, has realized that chasing wokeness can backfire. And let's talk about a few things they put in place here, though, because I think it's great that they are rolling back out of this. But let's talk about a few things that they did here. One, they created a Center for Racial Equity, and again, this is in 2020. You're going to see a lot of this being created in 2020, or at least getting to that 2.0. And they committed $100 million commitment over the course of 5 years. And that center focuses on addressing systematic racism and promoting racial equity in areas such as finance, health, educational, and criminal justice. Again, that's Walmart. So that's something they'll be rolling back. What about they rolled out a BDEI program? It's belonging, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they added a D in theirs. What about the Live Better U Education program, which offers associates opportunities to pursue higher education, yada, yada. Associate resource groups, supplier diversity program. Well, they would have suppliers that had to be diverse. So, I mean, it's just wild. And there's, of course, policies and benefits that they're rolling back. But that's a lot that they did.
Yeah, and all of these things bog down the mission.
Exactly.
And that's why we're having that's why, but it's one of the many factors with supply chain issues. And, I think even in the 80s, 90s, and of course I know it infuriates minorities to hear me say this, but I think we were on a journey of improvement. And we allowed the George Floyd, that I will not go into, but you were not allowed to discuss it. There's a lot of dynamics around that issue. But you said it, Kristin, it was a knee-jerk reaction. And then it was like 100 miles an hour. We have to do this, this, this. And they start implementing. They're getting think tanks and spending millions of dollars without really knowing what the outcomes were going to be. Well, now they're starting to see the outcomes. And I'm going to make another prediction for you. Disney is going to have to follow suit because they continue to lose money on the movies that they're producing because they're not family friendly. They are trying to be proponents of some of these issues that I think people are kind of fed up with. So we're going to see what's going to happen with Disney, but they've got some big decisions to make for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You want to talk to us about Harley Davidson? I put that on there. I thought it was hilarious because my brother-in-law is a big Harley Davidson guy. And they put in this crazy DEI program. And I'm like, really? How many, they exist. I'm like, but how many gay or LGBTQ plus bikers do we really have, right? Like, I find it just it's just wild to me that these companies are so out of touch with who their customers are.
Kristin, it became really like a religion because from a marketing, let's just peel back everything else, just from a marketing standpoint, you look at your core demographic and you appeal to them. Now, you may want to broaden that, but that would come in increments if you just study true marketing. And I don't know if you saw the new Jaguar commercial.
No.
Oh my God, Kristin, you got to read about this. So Jaguar redoes its logo and it does this commercial, doesn't even show a car. It's got all kinds of just bright color. You can tell people are in the LGBTQ plus
Wait, this is
community.
recent?
Oh, it's fresh, hot off the press. And it's another Bud Light waiting to happen. And traditional, Jaguar is a British car that's associated with kind of a James Bond era.
Right.
And now their sales were not good, but now they've decided to go the Bud Light route. And their commercial does not even show a car. And that Jaguar is one of the coolest emblems. Like,
I agree.
I get a little turned on when I see that when I'm walking down the street. I got to tell you.
I used to want a Jag. Ask Dave, and it was mainly because I just loved the emblem. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. It's hot. Yeah. So just watch what's going to happen to Jaguars. And by the way, if you're out there and you buy stock, you may want to wait till it drops completely and then buy the stock. Because
wait till it takes it
an
down.
adult's going to walk back in the room and go, okay, just like Harley Davidson. Anheuser-Busch partnered with Harley Davidson, and now they're doing all these, these really masculine commercials to come back. And they got Dana White from UFC to buy in. So it cost them millions and millions and millions of dollars only to go back to where they started from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so bad. I want to talk about a few of the things that Harley Davidson rolled out because I just find it comical and almost more sad actually. But so they also did the supplier diversity program. So they established diversity-based spending goals to engage and support suppliers owned by minorities, women, veterans, and LGBTQ plus individuals. So, I mean, that's to your point. Like, that is not the way to do business. You have to go with the most, or we know the one that makes the most sense monetarily, quality, etc. Employee training program. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. Everyone has DEI worked into their employee training. Participation in the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equity, or excuse me, Equality Index. So they participated in this index, which basically evaluates companies based on their policies and practices. It's like that social score. You get like have you seen?
That's what I'm talking about. Social score.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. What do you think yours would be, Ron, out of 100?
99.
Yeah, me too.
My multiple
my gosh.
personalities kick in.
Oh, goodness. I mean, that's just wild.
No,
That's basically what they did here.
I'm sure that there's people who could be judging us now, but I'm all about diversity. And when I was academy director, I did attempt to recruit some minorities simply because I liked for our instructors to be a reflection of the students. And if the students come in and all the instructors look alike, I knew that was a challenge. What I refused to do was to bring someone in who was not qualified or
Bingo.
not talented.
That's just it.
So, but I love diversity, and I know people always say when you have positions like you and I, Kristin, we don't understand, we're limited, and all that. But it's interesting to me that they took the ball and ran with it, and they got
Right.
tackled. It did not work. So
No.
we haven't budged. People with values and common sense, they toe the line, and almost always things swing back, and it's back to normal. And we've still got a ways to go on all these things because there's people who are angry and they've been victimized, and now they have to come out of the victim mindset and understand they can make it. We're rooting for you, people. We're rooting for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I wanted to share just a few more here because there's just been so much. John Deere and Tractor Supply, not to mention Ford. Again, they don't know their clients apparently. So they were pandering to every social movement. It didn't resonate with their core customers. And, I think we've already touched on this, but do you feel like this shift is it permanent or just a temporary reaction? Do you think there'll always be an element of this wokeness, or do you think they're going to completely swing back to where we were?
Absolutely. It's always going to be there. No, our country, that's part of democracy. You're always going to have diversity of thought, diversity of beliefs. Yeah. But what happened recently, the DEI matrix and all the things that was imposed, it became like a religion, and it became so personal and visceral. I'd never seen it except when I watch videos of the Vietnam War and some of those protests back then. Now that was hatred as well. Right. But you've said it, you were talking about Thanksgiving, and you said last week, just let it go. Don't try to bring up politics because it's gotten to the point that people loathe one another, and that's a dangerous place for a country. That's what concerns me. But I don't think it's going anywhere, Kristin. I think they're going to fight back, but I do think the adults have control now, and we can bring some normalcy back to our country.
Right, right. I know I've talked about something that John Deere had, and I don't see anything wrong with this. The employee resource groups. I know we had that at all three banks that I worked at. The smaller bank I worked at, I helped get that started. The employee resource groups, and I just feel like, to your point, there is a need for diversity of thought, diversity and inclusion. We do need to have that, but it doesn't need to be shoved down everyone's throats to the point it has over the past, I would say more like 6 years, 7 years, maybe even. I really feel like it was like Trump got into office and everyone freaked out, and then white man bad. I really feel like that's kind of like the timeline, right? So, I like to talk about the fact that I was the minority on my team in New York City, and I bring it up at least once every 6 months on episodes, because it's so important to understand. I was on a team of, gosh, was it 23, 27, and only 3 of us were Caucasian. And it was never talked about. I just don't understand.
Yeah.
None of us talked about it. It was New York City. It's a melting pot. We were just friends with each other, right? And it was very diverse. And we hung out every weekend. Like there were like 10 of us. That we would go and spend time together every single weekend. And it boggles the mind when we try to create, it's just like falsely create
It's
something
race
that can
baiting.
happen.
It is.
It is. It's like it can happen organically, right?
Yeah.
Like just like my friendships didn't. So I want to see us be able to go back to that where it can just be, let us be. It's a natural process for us to, I don't really feel like we have a huge racism problem in our country whatsoever anymore.
Well, they made it worse. I mean, we did, if they talk about it all the time, they've stirred it up. But
Exactly.
Chris and I do have a confession. I've been working on a song for, I just feel like I need to help John Deere. And so I wrote a song, They Think My Tractor's Sexy.
Oh, you wrote that, huh?
No, I eliminated she. That's...
Oh, I didn't.
They think my tractor's sexy. It really turns them on.
Oh,
so if they need it,
gosh.
Even though I'm against it, for enough money, if they call me, if John Deere calls me, I might share the words.
Oh my gosh. That, you know what, when you said it made me think of something. We were flying back from Orlando and my son's trying to do that popular like hair, they call it broccoli hair, where it's like the 70s, like, 70s hair. And so I don't love it, but I'm supporting him. The flight attendant said to me, my son had a hood up and you could see the kind of like the bangs, I guess, that he's growing out. And he said, they like something to drink? Literally, they'd my son, who's 10. And I'm like, I was laughing. I'm like, dude, you need to get your hair cut. They weren't sure if you were a boy or a girl.
Poor Kristin's getting bayed and K'd. He got K'd last week.
Oh my gosh.
They take my tractor sexy. I'm onto something. All right.
Oh my goodness. All right.
I just want to make sure you were paying attention.
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, look, I think I think we need to celebrate a hero here. There have been people lost jobs. They've stood up against this and they did it for the right reasons. I think we did podcast number 10 for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. And I have friends, and I know when people go, oh, I have a black friend. That's not what I'm talking about. I've got friends on all spectrum, and it's irrelevant to us. It's really irrelevant. And we need to celebrate those people who led the way. There is a Trump advisor, Deputy Chief of Policy, Stephen Miller, and that America First Legal, it's a conservative group, but they have fought this. Now, of course, they're hated, but they've not discriminated against anyone. They've just fought things that they believe were unfair. And it follows along with the abolishment of affirmative action. So Stephen Miller is coming back on the scene in the cabinet, and I think it's going to be a good choice. And I think as we quit talking about skin color and race and all these things, I think we're going to see a time of unity. I think people are going to be working again. They're going to prosper. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Kristin, when we talk about all this, there's usually 1%, 2%, 3%. Me and my friends were never affected by any of this because we just continue to be friends. So I do think this was a minority of belief systems that implemented all of these things, and then they turned it into a religion and it started to grow. But I think we're going to see that, like you said, it's going to come back to like you and your New York coworkers. We're just going to go back and live life and be human beings.
It was beautiful. Yes, I would love to see that. I think we can get there too. I agree. I feel like this is going to be a period of healing if we allow it. We have to get out of our own way, I think, sometimes.
I hope so. And Kristin, the other thing is hopefully it's going to be a cost savings. With all of these policies, companies spent, brace yourself for this. And we throw out numbers so much, I don't think people realize how much money this is.
Oh, yeah.
over $2 trillion on these kind of programs.
Oh, my goodness.
And I believe that if you give people opportunities instead of making them divisive and starting all these DEI programs, it's going to provide opportunity, and people are going to
Right.
embrace opportunity. They always have.
Yep.
Yeah, this could be an
I really
exciting
feel,
time.
well, and for these companies, by stepping back, they're going to actually foster a more cohesive and merit-based environment, which is how it should be. You talk about heroes. I want to bring something up. So I was researching basically some of the negatives that came from this, and I think it's important to talk about that. There was a CBS screenwriter lawsuit, and this is in 2024. Brian Beneker, so a white screenwriter, he followed a lawsuit against CBS because he was denied a staff position on the show SEAL Team TV show. I haven't watched it, but I've heard of it. In favor of writers from diverse backgrounds, so they had to meet a diversity quota, and so he got passed up. And the court has allowed the case to proceed, and they're highlighting ongoing debates about DEI practices in the entertainment industry. So that one has not come to fruition yet, but at least it is going forward.
Hollywood has taken a hit because of all their endorsements, and
Yeah.
people begin to see through that. I can't get on my private jet and lecture you about how to live your life.
Right.
And that's what was happening. And through podcasts such as this and others, of course, that are way bigger than us, but the whole dynamic's changing. It's changing the way people get their news from legacy media over to podcasts. And look, I'm not saying everything in podcasts is great. People need to do homework. I say this all the time. I've read headlines before, and then I go down a little rabbit hole and realize, hold on, that's been clipped up, or that's AI,
Right. Yes.
or whatever. So we're going to have to be very cautious as Americans, period. But we are on the precipice of something great if we pull together, begin to prosper, and let people live their lives and stop being so judgmental. And
Right.
we don't want the opposite either. We don't want this to be a knee jerk where we start to, bully people in the
No.
LGBT plus community. None of that should happen. We need to love humanity and help families prosper, be safe, the basics. That's what people are looking for.
You slaughtered it again.
What?
You're like, okay, so you're
What did I slaughter?
LGTB.
LGTB. Okay.
Yes.
I think
You're
I'm leaving
coming
that
up
in.
with all
I'm
sorts
leaving
of
it
great
in.
acronyms. And you were in the middle of a great
I know.
thought, and
I
it
know.
was so I really held back a remark until you were finished. So I apologize.
But did you
for that,
hold
Ron.
back? Did you really hold back?
I waited until you were done at least, because I had a big smirk on my face.
Folks, I'm not gonna ask the producer to edit anything. My heart was in the right place.
Yes. LGTB is no
LGBTQ plus.
Oh goodness.
They
love
think
it,
my
Ron.
tractor's sexy.
Oh,
That's my
yeah,
new.
They.
That's my new.
That's funny because that was subtle, and I did not pick it up at first, and then I really appreciated it once it sat there. I don't know. I just think I'm so glad we covered this. I'm glad we're seeing the trajectory going back to, I guess, what we could consider normal. At least scaling back. I appreciate that. I would like to see our country ran as a profitable business rather than a gigantic nonprofit where money's being flushed down the toilet.
And stay out of people's lives, Uncle Sam. Stay out of people's lives. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Just as we close, Kristin, from a leadership standpoint, this could be the most important leadership principle we ever learn, and that is stick with your values.
Yes.
I saw people putting in pronouns when they didn't believe in it just because they were afraid. And in the long run, if you stick with your values, things are going to work out for you. There was a time when you may have had to change jobs, but you would land on your feet eventually. So that's the encouragement I would say is do your own research. We don't want to be judgmental. We want to help the country heal. And also we have to make sure that we stand strong on our belief system, and we have to protect that which is sacred.
Right. I can almost guarantee you Walmart's CEO did not 100% believe in all of these programs. It
Well, they
was
couldn't have.
merely appeasing, and probably the same for the majority of the CEOs, right? But yeah, I mean, just look at the cost savings. If they would have just said, no, you don't have to speak out against it. You can just continue on,
Yeah.
right? And there's no reason to jump on every bandwagon.
Just do what you tell your kids. Sorry, we can't afford that.
I love that. Yes, exactly. For all that waste.
All right, everybody. We certainly hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Kristin, I
Yes.
hope you have a great Thanksgiving.
You as well, Ron.
Thank you. Be
Thankful
the leader
for you. I didn't say that last year, and I felt so bad.
What did you do?
We did a whole "What are we thankful for?" and you were like, "I'm thankful for my co-host," and I was like,
And you
"Oh,
skipped
thank
me.
you." And
Well,
I
we-
didn't say it.
We have a few more seconds here if you want to
So
go ahead and make
bad.
up for it.
I am so thankful for Ron. I am. I'm just not a real sappy gal, but I am thankful for you and this podcast, and excited to see you in a few weeks.
I wish we could have played America the Beautiful while you were saying that.
Nice. That'd
Thank
be
you,
good.
Kristin.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.